us, folks and allies and people with that lived experience tell their stories. There will be several storytellers, and there will be lots of refreshments. So I encourage everyone to come out. Um, Also, next week, the week after, I'm sorry, March the 7th, we will be making a move from the fellowship hall up to the second floor library on 214. We will have somebody downstairs for a while in case you have trouble navigating. Um, and I believe that's all the announcements I have right now. Our speaker tonight is going to be Michelle Williams. She is a dear friend of the Midway and we live up here. She is going to talk about Black history and the fact that it started long before America. So, as she put it, she's going to take us back to Africa and then talk about civil rights and some of the great civil rights leaders that we've had, and basically where do we go from here? Before Michelle comes up, I'm going to have Jason Murphy start the talking to her.
Good evening. Dear Lord, thank you for this opportunity to learn a little bit more about Black History Month and to spend some time in fellowship with one another. It's always good to gather with friends on a Friday night, just be in a safe space where we know that we're cared for and loved no matter who we are and for who we are. Thank you always for watching over us and guiding us through this time. We ask all these things in your name. Amen.
Great. I believe it's on. All right. Good evening, everyone. Thank you so much for having me. I'm so excited to be with you once again. And it's the month of Black History, the shortest month of the year. My favorite. So I thank you for having me and look forward to just taking you through a journey. We'll take you back to Africa, but I promise pretty bad. There's that. So just a little bit about me and who I am. My Black history. I'll just share a little bit about me. I start with my 3-2-1. I have 3 sons, 2 grandsons, and 1 husband. So that's my 3-2-1. Those are all the men that live in the houses and have lived in the houses over the years with me, and I don't know what I'd do without them. They're a handful, but I'm definitely outnumbered. So 3 of those people are named Sion. My husband is Sion Sr., my oldest son is Sion Jr., and then there is Sion the third. So it's a little confusing. This funny story is about the history of Sion. It's spelled S-E-A-N, which a lot of white people pronounce Sean. When Sion, my son, came to live with us, he was in 2nd grade, I believe. He grew up in Cincinnati with his mom and his stepmother. He had never been in a class with another kid named Sion. So he was so excited he got to school, came home his first day, and said, "Mom, you'll never believe it. There's another Sion in my class." And I was like, "Really?" He goes, "Yeah, everybody calls him Sean, but it's Sion." So he saw it written out, and he's like, "I don't know. Everybody calls him Sean." But yeah. So me, as a profession, I just listed down kind of some things about me. My profession, I'm in sales. I've been working in pharmaceutical sales for the past 25 years, in business development and healthcare. My passions are just being a DE&I educator. I am adding belonging to that as well lately, just because that's really what people misunderstand about diversity, equity, inclusion, is the part where we all get to belong. So I'm a speaker, author, anti-racist advocate. I enjoy volunteering and facilitating. My most favorite thing to do is be a disruptor of the status quo, wherever I go. And my calling is then helping people to overcome their unconscious biases and create a more inclusive environment for everyone. My fun hobbies: yoga, knitting, walking when it's warm, reading, writing, mentoring, and of course I love traveling. Lived in a lot of cities. Dayton, well, I was born in Boston, grew up in Toledo, moved to Dayton after college, lived in Ypsilanti, Michigan, Oslo, Norway, and we moved to Plainfield in 2000, so about 25 years. I went to Eastern Michigan University, which is where I met my husband, and my degree is in public relations with a minor in communications. And I have a certificate that I got in 2021 from Northwestern University on diversity, equity, and inclusion leadership. So that's who I am. Now let's jump into who this nation is. All right. So we look at the nation. A lot of times we frame it from the 1776. The real start of the nation is 1619, and you have to really think back to, we didn't just show up in 1776 and have all these things in place. It took some time. So one of the most important things to know about Black history is that it didn't begin with slavery. That's how it's framed in our textbooks. That's how we learn about it in school, if it's taught at all. But it didn't begin with slavery. So we have to get beyond just basic quotes that we hear from our dead heroes and move into actually learning about the history of Black people. You'll hear me use the word Black instead of African American a lot. I do know what an African American is to me. That could be anybody from a friend of mine who moved here from Nigeria to Elon Musk, who is trying to take over our government. He's African living in America. So I call myself Black. That's how the world sees me, and that's how I identify. So moving on to just talk about where we are in our continuum. When you look at the year 2011, this is the year in which our country will be having less time in slavery than not. So with a baby born today will be 99 before we get to the point where this country has had less time under slavery. So when you look at the American slavery, the red here, it's important to note that 246 years, that cannot be undone overnight. It's going to take time for us to work through that. We've seen that the 89 years that we spent in segregation post the end of slavery didn't ratify or fix everything. We're still working towards some of the things that will bring us all to equality. And at this point where we are in 2024, if you wanted to compare it to, let's say, a football game, we're at halftime. If this was a Netflix series, we're in season 1 of 4. If we're watching the Sweet 16, those are coming up. We're only in bracket 8. If we were baking a cake, we haven't even turned on the oven. We're just getting the ingredients together. We were talking about childbirth or having a baby. We're still in the first trimester. Through our K through 12 education system, this would be about 3rd grade. If we were watching the news, we haven't even gotten to that first commercial break. If we were going on a trip, we'd still be in TSA preaching. So we've got some time, and so we have to allow for grace during this time as we continue to learn more about where we are in our history as a country. So let's talk about what African people were doing before they were brought to America. Again, we talk a lot about slavery. That's what we hear when we talk about Black history. You hear it in school, you hear it in the media. But Black people, or African people, were actually living in thriving communities with their own local commerce and industry. They were maintaining their tribal lineages and customs, and they had ties to their own African religion. They were serving as kings and queens and had their own governmental structures. They were a self-sustaining people with their own farming, arts, architecture, and technology. So we look at a little bit back then versus now. Ancient Africa was the home of several prominent civilizations, including Egypt, Carthage, and Ascom. And most people in ancient Africa were farmers, and they lived off of the land. They were skilled in art, math, medicine, astronomy, and technology. And the climate there really provided optimal conditions for growing a lot of the foods that we still consume today: corn, wheat, and rice. So it's known, the continent is known to have over 3,000 tribes and ethnic groups. And a group is just a group of several tribes, and I say group. So looking forward into Africa now, a lot of people think, after they came and took all the people that they wanted, that this poor country or continent just went to nothing. But it really still has a lot of the natural resources. It accounts for 65% of the world's arable land. That's the land that you can actually farm and grow things on, and 10% of the world's renewable fresh water. The world's largest reserves of cobalt, uh, the tantalum, those things that are used to make electronics and cell phones, diamonds, platinum, uranium, those are some of the other resources. And the natural resources, oil, natural gas, iron, copper, gold, sugar, salt, and cocoa beans. So Africa today is impacted by the same issues that we face in the U.S., like climate change, food insecurity, corruption in government, and eroding natural resources. So I want to show a little bit about the map. This is the map of the African diaspora, and this map kind of shows Africa in the center. You can see the size of Africa. This is one of those maps that actually shows the size of Africa compared to the other nations or other continents. And a lot of times in the U.S., our textbooks, our media, our descriptions are depicting the U.S. as the middle, and it always makes Africa look smaller. But we're going to show in the next slide exactly how big Africa is. Wow. So if you look at the United States of America here on the left, you could fit so many other countries along with the United States, but that is what it looks like geographically when you superimpose the size of the United States compared to the continent of Africa. You could also slide China, Europe, Asia. You could slide all these other countries in there. That's a huge landmass. And so when you talk about the number of people, 1.5 billion people in Africa currently. And the continent is 11,724 million square miles. So that's about 5,000 miles north to south, and 4,600 east to west. So that's a lot more than we think of when we think of this continent. There's 54 countries in Africa, on the continent of Africa. The map that's shown on the left is just the original territories that were, that's 200,000 BC to 350 BC, what was recognized as the original tribal lands. And then on the right, you see the actual countries as we recognize them today. So 54 countries on this continent. So I always talk about the way that we have a perception of a place or what we've heard about a place really shapes what you think about it. So imagine someone coming here to Illinois and the only place you took them was to, let's say, the south side of Chicago, where there was shootings or things that were happening that gang activity, and that's all they got to see. Or maybe they saw homeless people sitting on the streets and not being able to feed or sustain themselves. If that's all you see of a place and you neglect the fact that 5 miles north of that, you have this beautiful bustling city, that's the thing that we do to Africa. And largely, the church has been responsible for doing that. I teach a lot of classes like online and stuff. Now I ask who's been to Africa, and I get a lot of people raising their hand, and I say put your hands down if you only went to Africa on a mission trip. So when you look at the things that you see in the media and the things that we see from just hearing other people's experiences and the things that they do to get people to go to mission trips, you're seeing a side of Africa that is just a part of it. Yes, there are hungry people. Yes, there are homeless people. Yes, there are issues of poverty and there is need, but that is not all Africa is. These are some beautiful pictures when you look at African tourism. I do want to go to Africa one day. I've never been there, but this is my idea of going. There's, I think, 130 different Hilton properties, 120 different Marriott properties there. This is one of those, and the cities are robust, and they also have some safari land areas that would allow you to take in all of the nature and the other elements. And a friend of mine and I, we're planning. I don't know when we're going to pull this off, but a trip to Tanzania where there's a luxury spa and resort with a safari on the side. So that's what that picture is, the elephants and the fire pit. So that is one perception. It's important that we don't let the limitations of what we've been told shape how we think about Africa. So here's just some additional facts about the continent. I've already talked about the hotels. Nigeria is one country. Let's pick that one out. It's one of the world's richest countries, 21 billionaires. That's today. 25% of the world's languages are spoken in Africa. And then the total private wealth in Africa was 2.5 trillion as of 2023. And just from a landscape perspective, the pyramids that were in Egypt that were constructed over 4,500 years ago are still standing today. That says something about the people and their ability to build and have infrastructure. And Africa is also home to 25% of all mammal species and 20% of the world's land and bird species. So a lot to see there when it comes to nature and animals. So I said we go to Africa, now we're going to come back. So how does one become African American or Black? So I talked a little bit about African American and what that means and why I identify as Black. We are only Black in this country as compared to white. It was a social construct that was created to help keep people in their place during that time of segregation and certainly during the time of American chattel slavery, where if you didn't identify someone as other, it was difficult to demean and disrespect and continue the legacy of slavery, that 246 years, countless generations of people that were impacted by that. So some of the Black Americans who have contributed, when we talk about Black culture, there's not an area of American culture that hasn't been influenced by Black people. So music, food, art, politics, sports, transportation. I'm going to get into a few inventions by some Black Americans that we wouldn't have if it were not for Black people. So just a few of those, the gas mask and the traffic light were invented by Garrett Morgan. That helped to improve the way that people were able to go about their lives. The gas mask was actually used in the war so that to help save lives. And had that not been invented, maybe we wouldn't be here. Protective mailbox. So apparently before mailboxes had coverings, they used to just be little pieces where they would put the mail and things would get wet and be subject to the elements. So Philip Downing created the protective mailbox. The carbon filament light bulb was enhanced by Lewis Latimer. He created that filament that up until this LED technology was the main way that we use light bulbs. Shoe lasting machine, Jan Ernst Metzlinger created that during a time when people were wearing leather shoes and needed to be, you couldn't just get a pair of shoes and you needed to go and get them fit, custom fit. So the multiplex telegraph was used for communication, and that's by Granville T. Woods. The automatic gear shift, Richard Spikes, what we use in our vehicles. I mean, I think everybody pretty much uses automatics now. The clothes dryer, invented by George T. Sampson. Folding chairs by John Purdy. And the golf tee by George Grant. What were they doing before that? I don't know. Just teeing off on the grass? I don't know. So I just picked out a few Black women that I admire that I wanted to just share a little bit more about. So Madam C.J. Walker and Annie Turnbull Malone, these are two Black women who created what we know as kind of the foundation of Black hair care. If you know Black people that have had to straighten their hair, or not they had to, but have chosen to straighten their hair, this is the foundation of where that came from. These women came up with formulas that worked for Black hair because mainstream products did not work for Black hair. And it was out of necessity that Madam C.J. Walker created this hair growing serum because she was starting to lose her hair and she needed something to help regrow her hair, and it became so successful that other people were asking for it. And so Madam C.J. Walker ended up creating kind of a sales team to go share and spread throughout the world or throughout the country. And to this day, she is still recognized as America's first Black millionaire. Annie Turnbull Malone, I put her on there because she actually was the one that helped create that product with Madam C.J. Walker. She didn't. She went on to develop and invent some other things, but she is the one who was foundational in getting that product out. Madam C.J. Walker was the one that took it and sold it and became the millionaire. All right, and then Alice Parker. She is the one that is responsible for what we now know today as central heating. So before she came along and invented central heating in homes, we were using fireplaces to heat homes. And incidentally, after her invention and the mass production of heating systems, people were able to, we saw a reduction in home fires and injuries from people not having to use fireplaces. And it largely changed the way that people slept in homes, especially in colder climates where people would huddle around the fireplace because that was the warmest place. And then people ended up being able to go to bedrooms through this this forced air heating system that she developed. And then Ellen Eglin, she invented the washing machine. Prior to her, there was the process of, I couldn't imagine having to do this, but that washboard where you scrub and scrub and scrub. She got tired of that and developed what we now know as the washing machine, the technology that shakes and moves clothes around so that they can get clean. So those are just a few Black women inventors, and I have a whole list of other inventors and people that it's countless. When you look at the list of Black people and their contributions, it's amazing how many Black people have contributed things in this country. So I encourage you to look that up when you do have time. I'll mention a few Black men also. Dr. Charles Drew, he is the inventor of the blood bank and is most known for getting that established, which helped save countless lives. He was a doctor by trade, but developing the blood bank is what allowed so much to progress in the area of surgery and help save lives. Benjamin Banneker, was an explorer and astronomer. He developed what we now know as the encyclopedia. He developed the first encyclopedia. So he enjoyed studying and came up with a whole set of books. I don't know if anybody had those when they were little, but he came up with those. George Washington Carver, a lot of people know him as the Peanut Man. He actually didn't invent peanut butter, but he invented over 400 things using peanuts. He was a farmer, and he developed crop rotation because what they noticed about some of the crops that they were growing is that after 2 or 3 seasons, the nutrients would be depleted in the soil, and he discovered that peanuts, sweet potatoes, and soybeans would replenish the soil. And so he would do these crop rotations and help replenish the soil for farmers. And then Elijah McCoy. Who's ever heard of the real McCoy? This is him. He came up with the oil cup that helped lubricate trains. So train technology at the time, they would have to stop at certain stops and try to oil the wheels and get things going again. And he developed an automatic cup to be able to do that. And so his invention was stolen, and people were trying to replicate it, but no one could figure out what it was that he did with his drip that made it so perfect. And so they would say, no, this isn't the real McCoy. I want the real McCoy. So that's where that came from. All right, so these are just a few other Black inventors that made America better. Frederick McKinley Jones, he had over 40 patents for food refrigeration that were used in both homes and then also for train cars, which allowed food to be transported all across the country. Lewis Latimer, I mentioned him about the light bulb and the carbon filament. Sarah Boone, she created the first ironing board. Imagine what we'd be doing without that. I don't know where they were ironing things, but in 1904. Judy Reed, she created a dough kneader and roller, which eventually became what we now know as the mixer, kind of like a KitchenAid. Alexander Miles, he had innovation within the elevator operation. Prior to him, the elevators had to use two hinges, closed doors, and people were getting injured. And he figured out a way to create safer operations through the automatic door for elevators. And Marie Van Britton Brown, she invented the first home security system. She did it out of necessity. She was nervous that her home in New Jersey was being vandalized and set up a way to get cameras set up and made sure that her home was safe. But in turn, she was able to mass produce that to make things safer for everyone. So now I'll talk about just a few of our civil rights leaders. We hear a lot about Martin Luther King Jr. and Malcolm X, and some of the popular ones we're always quoting, but they didn't operate alone. They had a lot of people that supported them. Ralph Abernathy was one that was right there side by side with them. Medgar and Murray Evers. Thurgood Marshall, I mentioned him. He is the one responsible for the first Black Supreme Court justice and responsible for that Brown versus Board of Education decision that allowed for school desegregation. And then Shirley Chisholm, she was the first Black woman to run for president on a major ticket. She ran as a Democrat and didn't win, but she certainly made her mark on politics. And then Claudette Colvin, she is one of the most unsung Black heroes. She was 15 at the time when Rosa Parks was sitting on the bus and refused to get up. And Claudette Colvin was actually the first Black woman to refuse to get up. However, they didn't want to make her the face of the civil rights movement. She was 15 and a single mom and not the profile that they wanted to look. So they had Rosa Parks as a better face of that movement, so to speak. So Claudette Colvin deserves some flowers too. So let's talk about where we go from here. Remember where we are in this continuum. We have to continue to give ourselves grace. We're still in the process. We are not going to see this year 2111, but our kids and our grandkids and our descendants, they're going to see it. And we owe it to them to make this world a better place and to make our mark on this era where we get to live. And there's a few ways that you can do that. So become an expert. It's not that hard to become an expert on anything. They say that if you spend 1 hour a day on something, you're considered an expert. Reading one book a month on a specific topic for a whole year, you become an expert on that topic. I think of all the ways that my journey has led me to wanting to talk to other people about Black history and about Black presence, because there's a lot of things going on now that I also like to address. But it came through a lot of study and inquiry and curiosity and reading, listening, hearing from experts, and then following the leader. This is something everybody can do. There are so many Black leaders out here today that are speaking truth, that are giving information that if they're not on your radar, they should be. I'm going to give, I'll somehow get this to you. I can email you the list of resources that I have, and the list keeps growing. But if you find somebody who doesn't look like you, that you can follow, who's a leader in this space, and you just follow them and listen, you can learn so much, and that'll help you towards becoming an expert. And then hear the stories. You have to continue to listen to people of color. The people of color have a lot to contribute. I know in the most recent Super Bowl, there were a lot of complaints about how Black the halftime show was. And it's disturbing as a person of color to hear stuff like that. But when you look at the world in America and how it is always centered whiteness and white comfort, it's no wonder that people were kind of upset by that. But we have to keep listening and hearing the stories and listening to the music, even if you don't understand it. I didn't even understand Kendrick Lamar, but I felt the energy, and I could tell, from the struggle. So I had to sit with my 20-year-old son and find out the backstory of all the things, to find out what that was all about, and then it made sense. So I have to hear the stories too. I already talked about decentering whiteness, and then becoming an ally or an advocate. So there's a difference between an ally and an advocate. An ally is someone who comes alongside you and will walk a journey with you. An advocate is someone who will step up and will say, not in my house. They will make sure that when they have an opportunity, they step up and advocate for people who may not have a voice. So I always talk about how when I do a lot of racial reconciliation workshops and have an opportunity to be in front of people who don't look like me, I don't have access to your relatives. They cannot hear past the color of my skin. So you, as people who are adjacent to those folks, have an opportunity to educate and enlighten. And it's something that people of color can't do by themselves. So that's what I mean when I say becoming an advocate. So I will leave with just a list of resources and make sure that you guys have everything that you need. I'll email this to you so you have it. But this is a growing list that's working in a work in progress. So if you have things that you've heard or seen that you want added to the list, I'm happy to add those. I keep it posted on my website. The last slide has a way for us to keep in touch. If you're interested in following me on any social media, I have all of the links there. And the QR code will direct you to my website. I mentioned that I'm an author, so my book came out about a year ago in print, and my audiobook is in final editing, should be out very soon. And I have that available. It's a novel based very loosely on some of the experiences that I've had growing up in suburban America. That is it. I will take any questions that you have. Or do we do questions? Yes, Michelle.
You said something a minute ago about I'm trying. I don't know if we can go back to that screen. You said something a minute ago about not being able to see past your blackness. I have that problem. Okay, not with you personally, but anyone who looks different than me. Okay, I don't want to have that problem. You know, I worked in a school district that serves black kids for 23 years of my career, and I went in with the approach that we all have the same color blood, right? You know, I don't see color. And I don't think I got it right with that. I think I really should have changed myself and probably my students too by saying things like that. Because when I see color, I want to see a richness there. I want to see an experience that I've not been able to get with. You know, and so I'll tell you so short. The other day I was in Casey's and I'm very excited because there's a trans woman working in there. Okay, she's just really beautiful, big. So I been in the bathroom, came out, and the guy Michael, who was the manager, I'm like, Michael, I just need you to know that she's my favorite person in this place. I was oblivious to the two black customers standing there. And I'm driving home and I'm thinking, wow, that, right? Because I was speaking to a white man about a transgender white woman, and I said, I didn't even speak, you know, and I know where my heart is, and I know that if you just take a little more effort on my part to get it right, I'm trying not to be lazy about that, right? I had a friend one time who said, how come we only talk to black people, you know? And I'm like, because I want them to know I see them. Anyway, I'm not sure where I'm going with that. How do I de-white myself and still maintain my own heritage?
Yes. Yes.
All right. So my wife's given me the red signal. So
landing the plane is great. I love that. So I'll first talk about the I don't see color, why that's problematic. So when we hear as a person of color, a black person, I don't see color, that tells me that you don't see me. Or you're choosing not to see me, but we do see color. When you look at, unless my father was colorblind, he literally could not see color. And so there were times when he would come in and he'd be like, does this tie go with this suit? Or does this pants match this shirt? And he really didn't know. That is what I think of when I think of colorblind. Like, you really literally can't see. But we do see it. We see it, and it's part of our unconscious biases that stop us from acknowledging what we see that's right in front of us. Now, those two black men probably did not have a problem with not being acknowledged in the presence of a random place. But if that was somewhere where maybe a church setting or somewhere where you would have a conversation with them and then identify someone else and overlook them, that might be problematic. But I don't believe that that would be a huge issue. So I don't know if that answers that, but I think with regards to decentering whiteness, it's just recognizing that this entire country, that whole prism that we're talking about from 1619 on, everything has been designed to center and favor white people over people of color. So that is something that you have to be really conscious about undoing. And that's where we get kind of, it's to your, when something is to your benefit, you don't always want to disrupt it, right? But if it's for the greater good of the country and it will help move things forward, we owe it to each other and our descendants to be able to make things better for those that are behind us. Thank you. Does that answer that?
Yeah, tell me I got work to do.
But to not be afraid to do it or to make mistakes. I think to not be afraid to make mistakes. That's the worst part. Is that frozen, trying not to make mistakes, and then we miss the opportunity to learn from mistakes. So being willing to understand that I feel better and benefit from centering in the way, but that I'm going to lean into the discomfort, and then I'm going to make mistakes as I'm trying to be better. I know somebody keeps saying, "Oh, that takes time to be making." So if we keep trying and we're making progress, that's better than sitting and waiting for us to magically be successful. It's not going to ever happen. You're going to make mistakes. It's a problem.
Can I have that back? I mean,
No. One question for
how do you deal with white people at this company?
So
I mean, seriously, right?
I thought I was white until I was like in second grade. I grew up around all white people. I went through kindergarten through 12th grade. I never had a black teacher, never had a black classmate. So I was always around white people. We lived in a white neighborhood. The only time I was around black people was at church. My dad was a pastor, so that was the only place where I was really immersed in black culture, other than at home. So I got really comfortable around white people. I didn't know I wasn't white until second grade when I had an uncomfortable situation on picture day with my hair being a huge problem for my white teacher and apparently the school nurse and the principal. Everybody had to come to my rescue to work out this problem. So for me, realizing and finding that out, maybe second, third grade. I mean, I always knew I was black, because my parents told me, and I knew it from a heritage perspective. But I really developed a comfort around white people because of all of the environments that I was in. And it wasn't until I think college when I finally had a class where I looked around and was like, oh my goodness, there's a lot of black people. You guys want to hang out? And it was just me being awkward. They'd grown up in different cities and had the experience of having black people in their class. They didn't think that we were supposed to be back there, having fun and not paying attention. But for me, my first experience being in college and being around other black people gave me that just kind of desire to really kind of get to know my heritage a little bit better. But this world being centered around whiteness, I don't have a choice. Everywhere I go, and I often say this, there's nowhere in this country where white people want to go that they can't. So you want to go to the south side, you know where you can and can't go. You want to go to the northwest suburbs, you know where you can and can't go. Black people have had restrictions placed on them. We learn at a very young age, well, you can go there, but when the sun goes down, you need to be out of that town. Or your parents, my parents, would warn, well, you can go, but you're not able to spend the night at your friend's house. Like, we don't know what they're going to do, and just there's this restriction that you learn kind of early in life that I think white people don't have to contend with because the world is so centered around white.
I'm talking about how you, as an intelligent, educated person, okay, encounter someone. I'll use me as an example, okay, in my retirement, right? I'm lazy, I'm sloppy, I don't dress well. Okay. So when I come into your presence, there's a discomfort on my part. Am I to assume that you have the same discomfort? Or, but that's what I'm saying is, I'm sure you've encountered people who are so uncomfortable around you just because you're black. How do you navigate
So I'm aware that there's a discomfort. There's a lot of things that I do, and you'll see other Black women do this too. You use humor. You use, you know, you become the talkative one. You initiate the conversation to put people at ease. We learn how to do this at a very young age, and it's a survival skill. You have to learn it. I have to learn it even in a corporate setting. If I get into a room and I'm the only Black person there, I'm gonna have to disarm folks and lighten up the load because I'm aware that people are uncomfortable in my presence. I do have that feeling. We have well, I won't say it's a family rule, but it's kind of a rule guideline that we use. When you show up with to an event or something, my son made us aware because he grew up in Plainfield. We go to something. If there's more pickup trucks than Black people, we're leaving. We're not staying. So it's not that pickup trucks equal racism, but there's an indicator there that some of those folks might not want us around. I am very aware that there are spaces that I'm in where people are uncomfortable with my presence, but that is not a problem I'm willing to take on. That's their problem. Okay. And I feel like, and I know you, Michelle, like I don't feel a discomfort to the point where we can't have a civil conversation, but as strangers, there is a discomfort that's visible when a Black man, I've been with my husband when we get on an elevator and a woman will move to the side, and when you walk down the road and people lock their doors of their car and you hear that click, like somebody taught them that. But that's not something that I will take on as a personal burden. And then we talk about the things that you cannot react to every single thing that happens. These things happen, these microaggressions happen to us all day, every day. And you can't react to every single thing. You go crazy. So yeah, it's a learned skill. And I do have Black friends who don't even deal with that. Like they do not entertain being in the presence of white people for that reason. They just avoid it. I mean, it's hard to do at work and school and in public, but you take the option to find other people to surround yourself with. So I have learned the art of, I guess, being comfortable wherever I am, and if that makes somebody else uncomfortable, not my problem.
Good answer.
But we're good, right, Michelle?
Huh?
We're good.
Oh, yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, I figure you'll put me in check when I get out of line. I trust you.
Let me know if I make you uncomfortable.
No. I get uncomfortable because I say stupid things like I don't know if I used to ask my students, should I say African American or Black? And one of them told me, well, just so you know, you can't use the N word. And I said, okay, you can't call me cracker then, I mean, let's be real about it, right? Yeah. And so they called me Castro, the White Ghost. So there you go. Okay. I was like, all right, whatever, I'm giving in.
Any other questions? Okay. All right. We can shut it down. Okay. And I'll say thank you very much.
Thank you.